Art, yes.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to continue the same topic we started last week about prophecy and the path to prophecy. So we said Adam had shown when he was created, he was created as a perfect human being, which is basically what the objective of man is meant to be. And he was a prophet. He spoke with God. And that is where humanity, or us as people, as humans, should be striving to get to. So whether we achieve prophecy or not, that's one story. If we actually reach this human perfection, however, the path is the path that we should all be on. All right, so let's just go over quickly what prophecy is. So, מיסודי הדת, גרידה שהאל מנבא את בני האדם. All right, we saw this already last week. I'm just reviewing this halacha. Right, so it is מיסודי הדת. מיסודי, I mean, one of the fundamentals of Judaism is to acknowledge that God prophesizes man, speaks to man. Why is this a fundamental of Judaism? Because without prophecy, there's no Torah. The Torah was revealed to us, to Moshe, through prophecy. And so if there's no prophecy, there's no nevuah, there's no nevuah to Moshe, and then there's no Torah. ואין הנבואה חלה אלא על חכם גדול בחוכמה, גיבור במידותיו, ולא יהא יסרו מתגבר עליו בדבר בעולם. All right, and these are the criteria for becoming a prophet. Prophecy only comes to a person who is hacham gadol b'chokhmah, right? He is wise, he's great in wisdom. We also mentioned that hacham also means something else. We'll get to that soon. But he's great in wisdom. Gibor b'midotav, right? He is a hero in his midot, in his characteristic traits. He knows how to behave. ולא יהא יסרו מתגבר עליו בדבר בעולם. Right? And his yetzer, his evil inclination, which is not necessarily evil, but his inclination towards, we'll say, towards the earthly things, such as another slice of cake, another slice of pizza, anything that is not actually necessary, but it's just for our own a physical pleasure, not necessarily good for us, he's never overcome by this inclination. He is always able to overcome it. He overcomes it bida'ato, with his mind. An Isra Tamid. He always overcomes his yetzer using his mind. And he also has acquired a lot of knowledge and understanding. It says nechona. Nechona means real, truth, and well-founded. Comes from the word Vatikon Malchuto Meod, or the Mishkan. All these words means like the foundation. It's a solid foundation. Meaning everything he believes, that God exists, God is one, there is prophecy. He's able to understand these things and substantiate them. So this kind of a person, Adam shu memuleh bechol hamidot ha'elu, a person like this that has all of these characteristics, he checks all the boxes. Shalem begufo, he's also physically fit and healthy. שייכנס לפרדס וימשך באותן העניינים הגדולים הרחוקים ותהיה לו דעה נכונה להבין ולהשיג, והוא מתקדש והולך ופורש מדרכי כלל העם ההולכים במחשקי הזמן So this person, when he enters the Pardes, what does that mean when he enters the Pardes? When he enters the orchard or the field? Who's familiar with this Pardes? How do you enter this Pardes? Any ideas? So this Pardes, it's not a real Pardes. It's a mashal, it's a parable. When he enters the Pardes, means when he meditates on these things that are Maaseh Merkava, Maaseh Bereshit, right? We also refer to the Pardes, the Peshat, Remaz, Dirash, and Sod, right? The subtle things of the Torah, the secrets, so to speak, of the Torah. When this person sits down in meditation and reflects on the Pardes, meaning the Pardes, on the Malachim, on all these concepts, and he also has well-founded knowledge and understanding, right? So that he can understand what he's observing in the Pardes. Right? And he sanctifies himself, right? And he separates himself from the ways of the masses. Right? The people who just go about their routine without reflecting on their life, without reflecting on what they're doing. People who are just living in autopilot. And he separates himself from those ways. And he teaches himself, right? He actually goes through training for prophecy. We see in Sefer Shofetim, we see that there were schools of prophets, the special academies for people who wanted to become prophets. So they go through the special training to be able to focus on the Pardes, שלא תהיינו מחשבה כלל באחד מדברים בטלים, ולא מהבלי הזמן ותחבורותיו. To be able to clear the mind of anything, of any distractions, in order to focus and reflect on the Pardes. While he sits down, he's able to focus consistently and permanently on the Kiseh HaKavod, the throne of God. להבין באותן הצורות הקדושות הטהורות, ומסתכל בחוכמתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא כולה. And he's able to reflect on the entire wisdom of God, everything that God reveals to man. How does God reveal his wisdom to man? He says, Kula, all of it, Misura Rishona, from understanding the angels, Atabur Ha'aris, even all the way down to the inhabitants of the earth, right? He sees how the world works, right? You study science, you study biology, you see how the animal kingdom works, you see how God leads his world, and from there you learn the wisdom of God. He says, when you're able to reflect and see, understand the wisdom of God through all of these things, he's able to understand the greatness of God and become in awe of this greatness of God. Then this Ruach HaKodesh, right? This Shefa, this overflow of wisdom and knowledge, right? That comes out, that God emits, that comes out and goes through that whole system that we spoke about previously, right? It rests on man. Right? And when this spirit, so to speak, rests on this man, תתערב נפשו במעלת המלאכים הנקראים אישים. Then his nefesh, right? Remember, we spoke about the nefesh. The nefesh contains man's intellectual capacity in it, his emotions, right? It's the programming of the body, right? So this nefesh of man now becomes mixed in in this level of malachim, the lowest level of those malachim that are called the ishim. V'yehapech le'ish acher. Then he will transform into another ish. What does that mean? Transform into another ish? I mean, he himself will become as if he is now becoming united with these malachim called the ishim. And when the Torah speaks about an ish, right? V'ha'ish Moshe, right? It's not Moshe the man Moshe, the human Moshe. It denotes his elevation above other men. He's no longer part of the human race, so to speak. He is now elevated to a higher level. V'yehapech le'ish acher. He becomes a different person, an elevated person. V'yavin beda'ato, and he will understand in his mind she'eno kemo shehaya, that he's no longer as he was previously. Ela shenit'ala al malat sha'ar bnei adam hachamim, right? He has been elevated to a higher level above all the other wise men of the generation. He's not just a super wise man, he's on a whole other level. You can see things from a different perspective of just wise men. As it says with Shaul, when he was passing through the school, and he also got a bit of prophecy, right? And you shall prophesize with them, and you will transform into another ish, into another man or another type of man. All right, so who wants to reach this level? Anybody?
I want.
You want. Great. Excellent. So, in order to reach, there's a few criteria, right? We said you need to be wise, right? Hacham gadol b'chokhmah, with great wisdom. Gibor b'midotav, right? You need to be able to overcome your personal, we'll call it physical tendencies, inclinations, right? Be able to overcome it with your mind. By the way, we see this already with the Garden of Eden. There's remez to it with the Nahash, right? The serpent. So how do you overcome the serpent? So the serpent is, of course, it's a mashal to the Yetzer Hara. Says, how do you overcome? It says, Hu yeshufecha rosh ve'ata teshufenu akel. He says, I'm going to put this tension between you and man, right? Hu yeshufecha rosh. He's going to overcome you by crushing your head, and you are going to attack his ankle, right? It means that Yetzer Hara comes to attack us with, our most basic earthly inclinations, and our way to overcome it is through our minds. Hu yeshufecha rosh, right? He's going to overcome you with the head, and you're going to be attacking him at the ankle. All right, so we said De'ah isn't just knowledge. De'ah is a person's characteristics. It's De'ot harbe shekol echad ve'echad mibnei adam vezu mishura mizur hoka mimenu beyoter. Right? There are many, many different De'ot among people, and they're completely different from each other. Yesh adam shu bar chema koes tamid. There's one person, he's always angry, he's full of rage. Ve'yesh adam sheda'ato miyushevet alav ve'eno koes kenav. And there are those who are more settled in their mind and they're more calm, right? And if he does get angry, it's very rare. He'll get slightly angered every once in a few years. There are people like that. and there are those who are extremely arrogant. And there are those who are naturally a lot more humble and quiet and low-key. He says these two extremes, you can pair up these different characteristics and put them on a scale. Always angry or never angry, right? That's on each side. So these two extremes, einan derech tova, you shouldn't be on any one of these two extremes. They're not the good way. And you should never teach yourself to you should never go according to one of these extremes and not teach yourself, train yourself to acquire any of these characteristics that are any of these extremes. Right? And if you find that you're naturally inclined towards one of these extremes, or you have a tendency to get angry, let's say, or that you have already acquired one of these extreme characteristic traits, and he practices it and he gets angry, let's say, right? He should bring himself back to the correct way and go according to the right path, or the path of the righteous. And this is the middle path, or the straight path. It's also known as Maimonides is called Derech HaZahav, right? The golden path, which is actually originally first formulated by Aristotle. Derech HaYishara, he says, the straight path, he midah benonit shebechol de'ah v'de'ah mikol ha'de'ot sheyesh lo la'adam. So what is this straight path? So it's the middle path. You have the two extremes, someone who's always angry, someone who never gets angry, says this isn't healthy, this isn't healthy. You need to be in the middle. What is in the middle? Right? It's equally distant from anger and not giving about anything, not caring. Therefore, ציוו חכמים הראשונים שאדם שם דעותיו תמיד. A person should always be evaluating, assessing his midot, his characteristic traits, ומשער אותם, right, and evaluating them, ומכוון אותם בדרך האמצעית כדי שיהיה שלם בגופו. And he should always be like fine-tuning his midot to be as center as possible in order to be shalem, perfect, begufo, with his body. Right? We said the nefesh is one, and part of the nefesh is taking care of the body. All health, or all cure to the nefesh is through correcting your midot. All sickness to the nefesh comes from corrupting your midot. So, and that also affects your physical condition. It says you should always be evaluating your midot, evaluating yourself psychologically as well, and practicing the proper midot. And this middle path, v'derech zu ki derech hachachamim. This path is the path of the wise, of the hachamim. It says kol adam shedeotav deot benoniyot. It says anybody who his midot are centered, right, and equally distant from the extremes, memutzaot, Nikra Hacham. He is referred to as Hacham. So the key to achieving this, being Hacham, Gadol B'Chokhmah, right, worthy of Nivuah, is always working and correcting your midot. Fine-tuning your midot is what brings you to become a Hacham Gadol B'Chokhmah. And this will also open your mind to receiving any wisdom from your surrounding, from your teachers, and eventually, when you reflect, from God directly through Nivuah. All right, so how do we? Okay, so we know there's good midot and there's bad midot, and we also know that there's certain midot that the Chachamim told us should try to stay away from them as much as possible, such as jealousy and anger. It says Shemei Yomar Adam. הואיל והקנאה והתאווה וכבוד וכיוצא בהם דרך רעה הם ומוציאים את האדם מן העולם. Right? In Pirkei Avot, it says קנאה ותאווה והכבוד מוציאים את האדם מן העולם. Right? There are these three midot that they basically destroy a person's life. Qin'ah, jealousy, ta'ava is always greed. Kavod is honor, always chasing, pursuing honor. You want you do everything out of your own ego. He says these three things are terrible midot to have. I want to distance myself as much as possible from them. Efrosh mehen beyoter. I will distance myself from them as much as possible. Vedrahek letzad acharon. Right? So we said we have the kinaz over here. It's terrible. It's a terrible midah, right? A jealousy, let's say. So I'm going to go not to the center because I want to distance myself as much as possible. So I'm going to go to the other extreme. Right? It says to the point where this person, he wants to overcome his ta'ava, that he never enjoys life. Doesn't eat meat, he doesn't drink wine, velo yisa isha, right? And he won't get married, velo yishev b'dirana, and he won't try to find himself a nice, worthy apartment, but he'll live in a box under a bridge, velo yilbash malbush na'eh, right? And he'll never dress up nicely, ela hasak v'atzem v'kashe v'chayosef bahel, right? But he's only going to wear like cheap rags on his body that are ugly and uncomfortable, kegon kohane ovdei kochavim, such as the priests in the monasteries do among the pagan nations. Says it is forbidden to behave in this way. This is a bad midah to acquire. God wants us to enjoy life. He doesn't want us to abuse the things that he gives us, but he doesn't want us to completely abstain from them either. He wants us to enjoy it in moderation. So somebody who follows this path is called a hoteh. Hoteh literally means miss. He misses because he's missing the right path. Hoteh usually we say it as it's called a sinner. A sinner is somebody who's missing his mark. Sharehu omer banazir v'kiper alav ma'asher hatta an nafish. Says regarding the Nazir is like the Jewish monk who abstains from wine and he has to grow his hair. Says when he ends his Nazirut, he needs to bring a korban, a special korban, so korban hatat. Says a korban that sinners bring. Why is a Nazir bringing this? It says, Vekiper alav, right? And he should atone Nashir hatta ala nafesh, for sinning against his nefesh. Because by going to the other extreme, where you're not drinking wine anymore, you're not eating any meat, you're not you're dressing in rags, you're making yourself ugly. All these things corrupt the person's nefesh. So even though while he's doing his nezirut, right, he is elevating himself, he is sanctifying himself, but by doing that, he's also he's possibly corrupting his nefesh. By the way, nezirut is never meant to be for life. A person says, I want to be a Nazir for 30 days. And that's it. He has a certain problem. He wants to overcome it. He does a special treatment for 30 days. He goes to a monastery, we call it a Jewish monastery, where they don't feed you, they don't give you wine, and you just sit down and reflect all day. You have nobody to talk to. You take a vow of 30 days. That's it. And then you go back to your regular life. You could also do it for longer periods of time. But the problem is that you risk ruining your nefesh, which goes against the whole purpose of the Nezirut. It says, Amru Hachamim, the Hachamim says, Uma im Nazir shelo piresh ela min hayayin sarich kapara המונע עצמו מכל דבר ודבר על אחת כמה וכמה. He says, what about the Nazir, right, who only abstained from wine? That's the only thing he was actually forbidden to consume, right? He needs to bring a korban, hatat, for sinning against his soul. He says, so the Nazir who only abstained from wine needs to bring a korban. How much more somebody who abstains from everything else? He goes and he lives in the mountains. He completely secludes himself from other people. He doesn't dress comfortably or nicely. He doesn't eat good foods. לפיכך ציוו חכמים שלא ימנע אדם עצמו אלא מדברים שמנעתו התורה בלבד. Says the Hachamim say, you should not be abstaining from things unless the Torah told you to abstain from certain things. ולא יהיה אוסר עצמו בנדרים ובשבועות על דברים המותרים. And a person should not make a vow to prevent himself from enjoying things that the Torah permits. The Torah forbids eating pork. So the Hachamim said, well, don't take it a step further and say, I'm not going to have any meat at all. No, the Torah permits eating meat. It forbids eating pork. It forbids mixing meat and dairy together. But don't go ahead and forbid other things that the Torah permits. Kach amru Hachamim. This is what the Hachamim said. לא דייך מה שאסרה תורה, אלא שאתה אוסר עליך דברים אחרים. Says, the Torah didn't forbid enough things from you that you need to forbid more things than the Torah intended. So we have 613 mitzvot, right? It's a lot. The Torah already gives us enough restrictions. The Hachamim are saying, don't volunteer to take upon yourself extra restrictions. Because the Torah comes to teach us how to go down this middle path. ובכלל הזה, אלו שמתענים תמיד אינן בדרך טובה. And so to those who are always fasting for 40 days, fasting for 100 days, says that's not a good quality. ואסרו חכמים שאדם יסתגף עצמו בתענית. And the Chachamim forbid from always taking fasting upon himself. ועל כל הדברים האלו וכיוצא בהן, ציווה שלמה ואמר, אל תהי צדיק הרבה, ואל תתחכם יותר, למה תשומם. Says, in all these types of things, secluding yourself, fasting forever, preventing yourself from enjoying wine, and these kind of things, Shlomo HaMelech says, Al ti tzaddik harbe, says, don't be extra righteous, ve'al tithakem yoter, right, and don't try to make extra limud people of what else I can do, what else I can forbid myself, what other humrot I can take upon myself. Lama tishomem. Why should you become desolate? It says, when you do these things to yourself, you're corrupting your nefesh in this way. It makes you like a rougher person. It makes you a person who doesn't know how to enjoy life. It says, don't make yourself extra righteous. So what way is the right way? It says, V'zot Torah hashilema, right? And this Torah, this perfect Torah that we got, hamshalemet otanu, or hamashlemet otanu, the Torah that makes us perfect. כמו שהעיד עליה יודעה תורת אדוני תמימה מחכימת פתי. Says, as he who knows the Torah, Moshe, says, he testifies, Torat Adonai Temima. The Torah that God gave us is perfect. It's complete. Mahkimat Peti. It makes a fool wise. How does it make a fool wise? It's not just the study of the Torah, but it's the practice of the Torah. The actions that the Torah requires us to do, the actions the Torah prevents us from doing, is what makes us acquire these proper midot, is what directs us on this middle path, which anybody who practices and is going down this middle path, Nikra Hacham, right? He is called a Hacham. So, when you follow the Torah, says it makes, just by following the Torah, it makes the fool wise. Lo zachra davar mizeh. The Torah doesn't mention any of this behavior of always making yourself fast and not enjoying wine. It permitted, in a very specific case, for a person to become a Nazir, but even that is limited to a certain time period. So the Torah never asked any of this from us. ואומנם כיוונה שיהיה האדם טבעי הולך בדרך האמצעית. Right? The Torah directs the person to naturally go down the middle path. יאכל מה שמותר לאכול בשיווי. Says he shall eat what he is allowed to eat in moderation. וישתה מה שמותר לו לשתות בשיווי. And he shall drink what he is permitted to drink in moderation. Right? Don't abuse drinking wine and alcohol, but enjoy a nice glass of wine with your meal, enjoy a beer with your friends, have a little bit of whiskey on nice occasions, right? Says don't abstain from women. You're allowed to be with who you're permitted to be with your wife, in moderation. וישב המדינות בסדק וביושר, right? And he shall settle the world, right, and have the Torah teaches us to set up a just society, a just, set up a judicial system that makes sure that everyone has their rights granted to them. וישב המדינות בסדק וביושר, לא שישכון במערות ובהרים, right? Not to settle in, not to live in the mountains and in caves, to live in cities, live in communities. ולא שילבש השיער והצמר, it shouldn't be only wearing like the wool and hair. ולא שיטריח הגוף ויענהו, and not to there's also some types of priests, they also believe in physical physical pain as a way of worship. It says the Torah doesn't want any of this. What the Torah commanded, that's what you do. What the Torah restricted and forbade, you abstain from. Just by doing that, you will be practicing the right actions that will help you acquire those middle, moderate midot, characteristic traits. And that is how you will become a Hacham, and that is how you get that first criteria, Hacham Gadol b'Chokhmah, right? Gibor b'midotav, right? He is persistent and he is heroistic with his midot. And how do you do that? Lo yitzro mitgaber alav b'davar ba'olam. Right? ראוי לאדם להעביד כל כוחות נפשו לפי הדעת. Right? A person, right? He has his nefesh. His nefesh has all sorts of functions to it. Part of the functions of the nefesh, well, one of them is his intellect. Another one is his cravings and his dimayon, his imagination, a person's emotions. Says a person should always subject all of his entire nefesh, all the different functions of his nefesh, to his intellect. כפי שהקדמנו בפרק אשר לפני זה. As we have previously said, ולשים לנגד עיניו תכלית אחת. Right? So we said, so a person's midot, a person has a midot, and he needs to make sure he's always able to overcome his yetzer, his inclination, right, using his mind, his intellect. Meaning, all right, so I want a slice of pizza. I haven't eaten in a while. I feel like having a slice of pizza, maybe two. All right, does it make sense? Yeah, it makes sense. All right, enjoy your pizza. All right, third slice, fourth slice, fifth slice, right? At what point? You have to use your mind, use your discretion, use your intellect. It says, no. It says, 2 is the right amount, maybe 3 is the right amount, 4 is already, it's haram, it's too much. You have to learn to stop, right? It says use your intellect to decide, right, what actions you're going to do, right, that are useful and will contribute to acquiring the right midot, and which ones are going to corrupt you, or when is it going to be an excess, too much, abusing. Right, so you have to subjugate all the functions of your nefesh to your intellect. כפי שהקדמנו בפרק אשר לפני זה, as we have previously stated, ולשים לנגד עיניו תכלית אחת. right? And you should have one objective in mind. והיא השגת השם יתפאר ויתרומם כפי יכולת האדם. That one objective should always be understanding and learning God as much as humanly possible. Meaning everything you do is, well, is this going to bring me closer to God? Well, if I'm hungry and I need to eat and I can't focus on anything because I'm hungry, then yes, right? If not, then maybe no. Maybe I should be doing something else. Acquiring knowledge of God. וישים פעולותיו כולן, תנועותיו ומנוחותיו וכל דיבוריו מביאים אל זאת התכלית. Says, and you should be guiding all of your actions, everything you do, the time that you rest, the time that you work, the time that you talk, right? The things that you say should all be directed towards this one objective of knowing God better. Knowing God better comes both intellectually and in practice, improving your midot. עד שלא יהיה בפעולותיו בשום פנים דבר מפועל ההבל. Right? Until a person is able to train himself to the point where he doesn't do anything that is unnecessary. Anything that is not going to bring him towards this objective. This is meaning something that's not going to bring him to this objective. And when a person makes this his objective for everything he does, יתבטל מפעולותיו ויחסר מדיבוריו הרבה מאוד. He says he will be doing a lot less things, right? He'll be working a lot less, and he'll be speaking a lot less, right? He's not going to be, they said to me this. Like, what's it called? All the time. People are speaking about other people. Things, says, I had a friend once, he used to talk a lot, and someone once said to him, he says, you look like a very smart guy until you open your mouth. So it says, siyag lechokma shetika, right? One of the pathways to wisdom is to be quiet. When you're quiet, you can listen. When you have something wise to say, open your mouth. Kimi sheidbak bezot hakavana is somebody who has this in mind, right, of acquiring knowledge, getting to know God better, and everything he does is aimed at that. לא יתעורר לפתח הכתרים בזהב ולעשות ריקום זהב בבגד, right? He's not going to look to always get, the most, the fanciest car and the latest Gucci purse, right? Unless, אלא אם כן יכוון בזה להרחיב נפשו. Says it could be that his objective in that is like looking at nice art. Okay, so he's not going to want to paint all his walls and have make them extra beautiful in order to impress guests and impress people that come. But sometimes it's nice to look at a nice view, a nice piece of art, to have nice things for the sake of expanding your nefesh. In order to heal it. What does that mean? Right? Because a person who's always, let's say, focused and studying, especially when you're studying difficult things, right? It kind of like weighs you down. You need something to open up your nefesh, right? looking at something nice, a nice piece of art can do that. Listening to music can do that. You need to give your nefesh some rest. כדרך שאמרו, right, as the Chachamim say, דירה נאה ואישה נאה ומיטה מוסת לתלמידי חכמים. It says, right, the students of the wise, right, they have a nice apartment, it's kept well, they have a nice wife, and their beds are properly set and made. Everything looks nice and is in order. So דירה נאה, they have a nice apartment. They can have art in their house. They have maybe a window looking out to a beautiful view. They have a garden. Right? All these things come to elevate a person's spirit. But they won't waste their resources on things that are not essential. כי הנפש תלאה והמחשבה תאחר בהתמדת העיון בדברים הקשים. Because when a person is studying all these difficult things, and he's always deep in his studies, it says the nefesh itself becomes tired and lazy. And it's like when you're working hard, you need to go out for a little walk. You need to open your mind a bit. כמו שהתעייף הגוף בהתעסקו במלאכות המייגעות. Exact same way that when you're working hard physically, the body gets tired and also needs a rest. It's the same to the mind. When you're using your mind a lot and you're thinking deeply and you're studying difficult things, the mind gets tired and needs to rest. עד שינוח וישקוט. ואז יחזור לשיוויו. And then, after it gets its rest, it'll get back to its equilibrium. It'll be balanced again. כן תצטרך הנפש גם כן להירגע. And so too the nefesh also needs to have its rest. ולעסוק במנוחת החושים כמו הסתכלות בציורים ובדברים הנאים. Right? And how does the nefesh get its rest? It gets its rest from resting its the senses, sensory perception. Could be listening to good music, looking at beautiful art. עד שתסור ממנו הלאות, כמו שאמרו, כי חלשי רבנן מגרסה. Says, until, it rests from this heaviness in the nefesh, as the Chachamim say, sometimes it says in the Talmud, כי חלשי רבנן מגרסה. The Chachamim became tired from their studies. וקרוב הדבר שעל זה האופן לא יהיו אלו רעות. Right? So, if this is the reason why you are acquiring art, right? Dressing well, buying nice fancy clothes and things like that, then that's nothing wrong. It's not you're now spending you're spending your resources, investing all your resources, like your energy, your time, your money on buying extra pretty things just to show off to your neighbors, right? That's not good. But you want to invest in nice, fine art. You want to invest in a house that has a nice garden for the sake of giving rest to your nefesh. That's a positive thing. ולא פעולות heaven. רצוני לומר, ההתעוררות לעשיית הפיתוחים והקישוטים בבניינים ובקטנים ובבגדים. Right? To make your house, your walls, your car, your clothes fancy and nice. So we see, right? Well, we said earlier, nevuah comes from this overflow of shefa, right? Life / wisdom / knowledge / love that God is emitting and overflowing until it reaches man, right? When it reaches man, it comes to the man's nefesh. We saw that in order for a man to reach this level of nivuah, he needs to perfect his nefesh. How do you perfect your nefesh? Well, you perfect it by practicing the right midot. But then the nefesh itself, by practicing the right midot, by studying, the nefesh can become tired, and that it's not in its optimal state. And if it's not in the optimal state, it's not available at the moment, at least, to receive this nevuah. It says, Kol HaNevi'im, all the prophets, and mitnabe'in b'chol et she'yisu. Right? They can't reach prophecy whenever they want. Meaning, I want to speak to God, I'm going to sit down. God, give me a message. It doesn't work like that. אלא מכוונים דעתם ויושבים שמחים וטובי לב ומתבודדים. Says when they want to acquire prophecy, says they need to focus their minds, which is a lot of work, and they need to sit down in a happy environment. They need to be happy. Being happy is the natural healed state of the nefesh. Semechim v'tovelev u'mitbodedim, and they go off to the side. They go seclude themselves to a place where they can sit down and focus. She'en ha'nevuah shora lo mitoch asbut. Says nevuah cannot come to you when you are depressed, v'lo mitoch aslut, and not when you are down and lazy and tired. Ela mitoch simcha. It only comes to you when you are in a happy state. A happy state means your nefesh is balanced. Lefichach, bnei haneviim lifneim nevel v'tov v'hanil v'kinor. Right. Therefore, the students of the neviim, they always have some sort of musical instrument with them. V'hem mevakshim nevuah. The students are the people who want to prophesy. Zeu shene'emar v'hema mitnabe'im. And this is what it says, that they are trying to prophesize, means they're sitting down, playing nice music, getting into a state of happiness, so that they can meditate in that state, reflect, and be open to receiving nevuah. Klomar, mehalchin b'derech hanevuah ad sheinabe'u. What does it mean? That they are prophesying. It means that they are going in the ways of the nevuah until they receive this nevuah. Right? So they learn music, they learn how to play instruments, they go sit in a nice place, maybe there's good weather, nice view, a place where they can be inspired. It says, Ukvar yada'ata. כל כוח הגופני יחלש וילאה ויפסד ויבריא את החרב. Says, you already know that any physical function, every physical strength that a person has, right, there are times where it's stronger and healthier, and times where it's tired and worn out. וזה הכוח המדמה כוח הגופני בלי ספק. He says, and so too, right, the functions of the nefesh, even a person's imagination, a person's emotional state. There are times where he's happier, and there are times where he's more depressed, right? ולזה תמצא הנביאים תתבטל נבואתם בעת האבן או בעת הכעס וכיוצא בהם. And we see that there are certain prophets that all of a sudden something happens and they go into a depression. And then they do not receive nevuah that entire time of their depression or entire time of their sorrow. We see this, by the way, with Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov, when he was going down to Egypt to meet Yosef, it says, "Vatihi ruach Yaakov avihem." It says, and the spirit of their father Yaakov, right? It woke up, it became healed. And the Chachamim said that the whole time, from when Yosef disappeared until then, Yaakov didn't receive any prophecy. He was too depressed. And you already know the saying of the Chachamim, right? Nevuah doesn't come to a person when he is depressed. Here, and as we said, Yaakov did not receive nevuah the whole time that he was in mourning over Yosef. It says, "Vezot hasiba ha'asmit ha'kerova be'efsek ha'nevuah b'zman ha'galut b'lo safek." Says, and therefore, and this is probably the most contributing reason to why there is no nevuah throughout the entire period of our exile, is a depression that we have. Says, and even worse than this depression of being a humiliated nation, says that we are subject, we are secondary to, as if we are slaves to this other nation of, what he says, nation of morons. Remember, he lived in Egypt under Islam, and under Christianity was no better. You're living in a society where they execute people for saying the world is round. How are we going to get nevuah in those conditions? You live in a society where you're always being persecuted. How could you reach this human perfection? And how could you not be in a depression, at least enough to receive nevuah? Asher kibusu ha'eder hadavar ha'amiti, right? These people that don't have this real thing, this essential quality of man, this image of God. ותקבורת התאוות הבהמיות ואין להן ידו. וזה אמת מבואר, אלא כי הכלי כבר נתבטל. Says, and this is true, because we see that this tool that we have in order to acquire nevuah is gone. It's gone during our exile. What is this tool? It says this tool is our peace of mind. It says doesn't exist under these circumstances. והוא הסיבה גם כן בשוב הנבואה לנו על מנהגן ימות המשיח מהרה יגלה כמו שיעד. It says, and this is also the reason why nevuah will return to us in the days of the Mashiach. Because in the days of the Mashiach, we will no longer be subject to other nations. We will be living with in our own sovereign state. We will have academies, we will have universities, we will have wise people. We won't always be in a constant state of war. We won't be subject to depression as much as the past 2,000 years. And those conditions will ripen again for us to perfect ourselves to the point where we are worthy of nevuah. And there's another factor to that. We're going back to Sefer HaKuzari. We read this already previously in a few different classes. It says that Abraham was the special one among the sons of Ever, and he was a student. Right? This is what does that mean? The Segula. Segula means he has a Senem Elohim. He has this image of God. The image of God is also the ability to receive prophecy. Ve'ever היה סגולת שם, ושם היה סגולת Noah. Right, and Ever was the segula, the special one of the sons of Shem. And Shem was a special one among the sons of Noah. מפני שהוא יורש האקלימים השווים, אשר אמצעיתם וחמדתם ארץ כנען, אדמת הנבואה. Now we mentioned this previously. It says, he inherited the moderate climate land, or the land of moderate climates. What does that mean? It's not too hot and it's not too cold. Right? Eretz Israel is designed in a perfect place so that, if you go up, if you go into Europe, too far into Europe, you get a lot of gray weather, a lot of depressing weather. If you go a little bit southern, right, it's too hot, right? You're in the desert. Eretz Israel is perfect. If you like hotter weather, you have drier areas, you have some deserts. If you like the cold, like I do, you come to the Jerusalem area, Gush Etzion area, right? You can enjoy the cold, but it's not too cold. You get like 1 or 2 days of snow a year. Not like where my parents came from, in Canada and Montreal, it's like -30, -40. No, you get 0 for a few days, get some cold weather. But for the most part, the entire country has moderate climates. We don't have extreme weather. We don't have typhoons. We don't have these horrible storms. This is the land, Eretz Canaan, Admat HaNevuah, the land of prophecy. V'yatzayefet el tzafon v'hamel darom. And so Noah, he has his 3 sons. Yefet was sent up to the north. Ham was sent down to the south. And Shem, right, Semites, because we're from Shem, he inherited this land that's capable of prophecy. Uzgulat Avraham mikol banav Yitzhak, out of all of Abraham's sons, right, Yitzhak was the worthy one, and so he sent out the rest of his sons who are not worthy of getting nevuah, we're not capable of nevuah, says it's a waste for them to be here, send them out, leave the land for Yitzhak, right? V'erchik kol banav me'aretz hazot המסוגלת שתהיה מיוחדת ליצחק. וסגולת יצחק יעקב. With Yitzchak, his son was Yaakov. ונדחה עשיו אחיו מפני שזכה יעקב בארץ ההיא. And so Esav was sent away so that Yaakov inherits the land. ובני יעקב כולם סגולה. Right, but all the sons of Yaakov, they all have this image of God, this capability of receiving nevuah, and therefore this land was divided among all the tribes of the sons of Yaakov. So ve'ashuv el kavanati, I'm going to go back to what I was aiming at before. Ve'ka'asher yeh hadam shokel pe'ulotav tamid, when a person is always evaluating his actions, his behavior, he's always aiming towards the middle. He will be on the highest level of humanity. Says the highest, most perfect worship of God is perfecting your midot. Always evaluating your midot and fine-tuning them to the middle path. This is what the Chachamim say, Kol Hasham Orchotav Anybody who evaluates his ways will receive this, will be redeemed or see this redemption of God. Shne'emar, right? And they associate this with a pasuk, V'sham derech are'enu beyesha Elohim. He says, V'sham derech, V'sham means over there, there's a way to see, right, the redemption of God. He says, V'sham means over there. However, the Hachamim say, V'sham derech, they say, Ela V'sham. They don't say there's a way. They say sham from the word to evaluate or to assess. It's a word with two meanings. It's a play on words. I would actually also add the sham. Sham actually means like Eres Sham is Levant. It's the whole Middle Eastern basin, what they call the Fertile Crescent, right? The land itself, the Sham Derech, right here in Eretz Yisrael. There's Yemenites. There's two types of Yemenites. They're called Baladi and Shami. There's also different types of Syrians. Some are called Shami. Syria itself is called Sham in Arabic and in Hebrew. So, Sham Derech Areinu B'Yesha, you want to receive this redemption of God, this nevuah, this human perfection. Well, one, be in Eretz Yisrael, because this is the place for it to happen, right? You won't be in a depression over here. Visham, also evaluate your actions, and always aim to be in the middle. V'shuma hi ha'aracha v'ha'umdan. Right? And Shuma means evaluation. וזהו העניין אשר פירשנו בזה הפרק כולו בשווה, and this is the point of this entire chapter, right? וזה שיעור מה שראינו בזה העניין, right? And this is the perfection, the perfect way to worship God is to always evaluate your actions and aim them to the center. And that way, that path is called Derech HaChamim. And anyone who does this is called a Hacham. And anyone who's a Hacham, well, that's the first criteria to receiving any type of knowledge and communication coming directly from God. Any questions, anybody?
Yeah, if I could ask. Okay, Julia.
I usually say one at a time, and
what it was is I had my hand up. Do you ever see the hand coming up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. I'm sorry.
I had it up ages ago.
If you have a question, just jump in.
Okay, what it was earlier on when you was talking about what you should eat, like drink alcohol or whatever. But if you choose your scripture, if you choose to be a vegetarian, that will still be okay.
Yeah. I mean, it should be okay. I mean, we're talking about like abstaining from meat as a way to torture yourself, right?
Oh yeah, no.
I don't. For many vegetarians, it's not like that. For me, that would be a form of torture, right?
Okay. I like wine and I love whiskey also.
However, a lot of people talk about like a future vision of vegetarianism, right? And the truth is, again, we want to do only what the Torah permits us to do, or we want to do what the Torah instructs us to do, and abstain from things the Torah tells us to abstain from. In between, there's a lot of where to maneuver. If you don't like meat, you don't have to eat meat. However, when we have the Mikdash again, and we will be bringing the korbanot again, we will have to at least eat a little bit of meat. For instance, on Pesach, you have to bring the Korban Pesach,
Yeah.
right? You have to eat from the Korban Pesach.
Yeah.
So any vegetarians here, just be prepared. You're gonna have to eat some Korban Pesach, hopefully soon.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Pleasure. Sarah, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I am a bit embarrassed, but I remember it was said from Baba Sali how he much like he was very doing things, not eating and so on. But for Shabbat, he really enjoyed it like it is a mitzvah. But I would like to ask if that was because he was in exile, or what is the meaning of his contribution?
That was probably like a form of like meditation and worship for him. I once also fasted for like an entire week, and I wasn't even hungry the entire week. Shabbat I ate, and I enjoyed it. Generally, I'd say for like most people, it's not a good practice to always be fasting or to fast non-stop. And even when the Baba Sali did it, he did it until Shabbat. He didn't do it like for 40 days or for a month or something. Again, the Baba Sali he's like a different level of mysticism. Maybe when we reach somewhere close to that level, we can discuss this again.
Okay, I sort of understood this, that for him it was a special mission or whatever. I'm not inclined.
I'm not too familiar with the ways of the Baba Sali. I'm just the Baba Sali, so.
I think I mean I read his book. He did eat, but he ate like leftover challah with tea, so he didn't really have a proper meal and until, like you say, Shabbat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you planning on fasting for a week?
I know.
No, okay. It says Lo Daicha. It says the Torah didn't require this from us. There's no need for us to do it. It says we can reach human perfection without it. A lot more difficult than fasting for a month is to perfect your character. If you really want to impress God, then do that.
Refine our character traits, in other words.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand it.
That's a lot more difficult than fasting for a month.
And have limitations in what we does.
By the way, Shlomo says Umoshel berucho miloched ir. He says a person who is able to control his temper and refine his character is a lot more courageous than a person who is able to, or is a much bigger hero than a person who is able to conquer a city on his own. It says Moshel berucho, someone who controls his spirit is stronger than someone who is able to conquer a village or a city.
Oh, so I can conquer a city because I fought with my mouth. I'm very good at that. But I have had practice, and I was in a situation about 6 months ago. My daughter was working under a very, I must, God forgive me, an evil person, but I didn't go anywhere. I kept silence until the time came for Hashem to release her from that lady.
There you go.
But normally I would have gone in. Wow.
You would have burned
so,
down.
yeah. So I only falter now to restrain myself from sweet olives.
Right, so restraining yourself from how do you call it? Restraining yourself from it's more about deciding when it's right to do something and when it's wrong to do something.
Exactly.
Acting in accordance with that.
I know it's wrong, but I eat a lot of sweet olives and I don't eat anything else. No lunch, no breakfast. I
Okay.
love sweet olives.
Okay, enjoy.
Oh, the lesson was very good, Sammy. Very good. I love it. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a
Anybody?
question.
Yes, please.
Personally, I know if I like something, I tend to eat a lot. Like chocolate, once I open one packet, I finish it. So in this way, I'm concerned. I don't want to like alcohol, but then I used to only take kiddush quantity, but then I like Moscato, and I'm concerned about myself. If I don't drink wine at all because I don't want to be addicted, I don't want to be tempted to drink more, is in this case, is it okay for me not to drink wine?
Okay, so when Rabban gets into like more detail on bringing cure to your nefesh, he says, so if you see you have a tendency towards one side, one extreme over the other, he says you can't cure that tendency by staying in the middle. He says you need to go a little bit towards the other extreme for a while until you balance out that tendency. So, and that's the thing with the Nazir, where he's abstaining from wine, let's say for a month or for 2 months. The Chachamim say, why is he abstaining from wine? Maybe because he experienced or witnessed what happens when a person abuses alcohol. And maybe he has a tendency towards abusing alcohol. So says, I'm going to not have any for a while. I'm going to balance out this tendency towards alcohol abuse, but then eventually I'm going to bring myself back to the center.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So it means I can abstain for a while,
Right.
but I should not prohibit it to myself.
Well, it's a very personal thing in the end. So in the end, it's really that's why the Chachamim say you always have to be evaluating. So if you feel you have a tendency towards something, then maybe you swear it off for a while, and then you reassess after a month or after a year. You reassess. Then you see, do you still have this tendency? Is it still something that's going to take control over you, as opposed to you controlling it? If so, then maybe stick with it a bit more. And that's really the job of a hacham is to help you on a personal level understand where you are. Like you said, it's like going to a doctor, going to a psychologist, going to a hacham, and saying, "Well, yeah, I have this problem with eating chocolates and sweets, and what should I do about it?" And he can help guide you. So maybe come visit like once a month, same way you would go to a doctor or to a psychologist. Really, a hacham should be a doctor and a psychologist. That's what the Rambam was. Maimonides himself, he was a doctor and a psychologist, and he was one of the greatest of the hachamim. Right, so you have some sort of sickness, a physical sickness. You go to the doctor and he prescribes either a certain diet or a certain medication. And the medication is for you. It's not for someone else. Meaning the doctor isn't going to go and say, you know what? Nobody have any wine anymore. Chocolates is haram. It's asur. Nobody should eat chocolates anymore. Says, no, you specifically have this issue. And so I'm going to prescribe this for you. Even the doctor prescribes it for, try this for 3 weeks, and then come back, take another blood test. We'll see where you're standing. Same thing with your
Okay.
actions and your inclinations.
And I mean, additionally, but I've seen that case as a non-Jew, and in the process of now in conversion, I've met someone who's Jewish and has a little bit of problem of drinking, and I don't want to risk in my family. And if I do not want alcohol other than for kiddush, is this also kind of prohibiting only in my family? If
You're saying you wanna only have alcohol for kiddush.
But is okay, but it must not be allowed not to kiddush with wine, right? If someone has alcohol problem, is it okay to make it on grape juice?
Well, it depends. If that's more a question for like a specific question for a hacham or someone you can really
Should this be consulted to Rob?
right, maybe speak to Rabbi Yossi or something like that.
About that.
Hmm.
Listen to Rav Kielstein's recording from last week and the week before.
Okay.
He gave a few classes about the Kiddush.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any more questions?
Yeah, Sammy, what does Medot mean exactly?
Midot, that would be your characteristic traits.
And what was Meor?
Sorry, which one?
Meor, it was prophecy, something about prophecy?
Prophecy would be nebuah.
Nebuah.
Sami,
Yes.
if a person is educating himself, like he knows the Torah, the mitzvot, but he blatantly has bad midot, can we consider the person to have the image of God?
Okay, the question is how bad are his midot? Right? We say Yisrael shahata Yisrael. Right? A Jew, even if he sins, right, it doesn't erase Yotzenem Elohim. Is he a wicked person? If he's a wicked person, then maybe he doesn't have the image of God. If he just, nobody's perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. People are struggling with different things. Who's the judge of if a person has Tzelem Elohim or not, and if he gets into Olam Haba or not? That's God. Only God could judge that, really. We don't know just because a person does bad things or struggling with his personality. We don't know that he doesn't also do a lot of misvot also as well. So we can only just focus on perfecting ourselves and anybody who's willing to learn from us. However, if he has a corrupt midot, then you shouldn't be studying from him. You shouldn't be learning from him. That is a halacha.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Sami, is there still school for prophecy? It's still existing or it stopped also?
With the school for prophet, there are yeshivot that actually call themselves schools for prophecy. I don't know how successful they've been up until now. I think eventually it will come back, like real schools for prophecy. Who knows? Maybe we'll even get to experience it in our lifetime. As far as I know, there aren't any actual prophets today.
There is no actual prophets today.
Not as far as I know. I don't think so. However, I will add something. I do believe that God does speak to us regularly. And prophecy is our ability to receive and decode this message. For instance, the Hachamim say, it says, Novelet Nebuah Halom. It says, the dreams that we have are like an intermediary state that has a little bit of prophecy in it. They say 1/60th, like 1 out of 60, right, of the dream is a prophetic vision. And this is like for everybody. Right? So how would this work? Well, how does God speak to us? You see in Sefer Daniel, right? The king of Babylon had a dream, like Paro in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. He had a dream, and he wanted his wise men to interpret this dream for him. And he learned from the mistake of Paro. He didn't tell his wise men what the dream was. He says, well, if you're men of God and you can know, the secrets and the hidden things, I want you to tell me what I dreamt. All right, because Paro told his wise men what his dream was, and they all invented some sort of interpretation, and he wasn't satisfied with it until Yosef came. And when Yosef came, he gave him interpretation. He said, "Oh yeah, that's what it was." Right? The king of Babel, he didn't ask. He wanted them to tell him what his dream was. And they all said, "Well, how can I tell you what the interpretation of your dream is if you don't tell me what your dream is?" Till Daniel came, and Daniel said to him, "I'm going to tell you the interpretation of your dream. I'll tell you what you dreamt that night. And I'm also going to tell you what you were thinking about before you went to sleep." All right? And he did that. And well, the point is that a person says, a person dreams about what's troubling him. And what's troubling him, what a person thinks about, are all sorts of things that a person experiences throughout his day-to-day life that maybe we don't pay attention to. But they get registered in our subconscious. Then when we go to sleep at night, all these things make a dream for us. All right, so how does God talk to us? Well, we're going back to the class on divine providence. God talks to us throughout everything that we do during our day. Right? The more we're connected to God, the more everything around us is God's kind of directing and talking to us through that. And then our subconscious picks things up. And then when we go to bed, right, we sleep, we dream about those things. The prophet is someone who's able to make sense of all that. That's my own take on prophecy. I think God is always talking to all of us. We just need to learn how to listen.
It's a great explanation.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess that's it for this evening.